Cold beer here. Welcome back, everybody. Happy to be talking with you, sort of, in the computer again. We are here Sunday, August, what is it, the 8th?
Yeah, 8/8.
August 8th. And rounding out a weekend. Hope everyone's doing well. Tilly, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I've mentioned before when we were starting to get into that time of the year when students are starting to come back and I have to work is going to start picking up. And I have to say, I'm not ready for traffic to be back to normal in Gainesville and have that student traffic. The summer traffic is always nice, and then you reach that time late in the semester, we're coming up on finals week and stuff, and then it's just you see all the students out on university taking their pictures in front of the stadium wearing their cap and gown, and it's that time of the year, and then a week later traffic is going to suck again and you're going to have to leave 20 minutes earlier to get to work on time, and I'm just like, damn,
Yeah.
can it just stay summer? But other than that, I'm good.
I think that and if you know anything about Tampa, we got traffic.
Oh yeah. Especially on that main drag coming over to y'all's place.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I would gladly trade all that terrible traffic, even though it is terrible, for the weather that we have here between November and May. I mean, I know that the kids it's school traffic, but man, I don't think that I don't think maybe I'm only 5 years removed from the most ridiculous winters you can imagine, and so I'm going to appreciate that for longer than people do. But gosh, those months are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's the pluses, obviously. You got storm season, and then you got this ridiculous heat and humidity, especially when at this time of the year when you get that 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock random rain shower. And then it stops, and then it's all of a sudden just hot, and then you walk outside, and it's the steam is just rising up because, and those days when it does that little 5-minute shower, and then the sun comes out and bakes it after it's not enough time for it to cool anything down, but plenty enough time to drop, 2 inches of water just so that it can turn straight into humidity immediately thereafter. So I'm looking forward to that November time frame too, when they get rid of a little bit of that humidity, drop a little bit of that heat, and get down to more moderate.
And I think, and maybe I'm making it up, but I feel like people are in better moods when you get towards the holidays. Some people probably aren't, and they suck all the time, but I just get a general feeling folks are in a better mood as you get towards those months. But that's not the way I was when I lived up north. I knew it was about to be disgusting for 5 months, and I was bitter about it. And that's too bad, because when your family is with you at Christmas and you're all pissed off, and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" You can't tell them it's because I'm cold.
You can't just say I hate the cold. Damn it, I hate it.
They look at you like, what? And so I think I feel, maybe it's just me, but I feel like people are in a better mood as you get towards the holidays.
Yeah, well, it's especially down here. I'm sure there's got to be a little bit of some of this changeover depending on what season kind of sucks the most where you're at. So if the winter is 3 feet of snow constantly, and it's just bitterly cold, you're probably looking forward to when it gets warmed up. And down here, I'm when it gets cold here, I'm it's kind of cold, but I'll just throw a hoodie on,
right?
Or
right.
a light jacket, and maybe I'll wear pants. I may still wear shorts, and it just depends on how late I'll be out and if I'm going to be out at night. And then you're it's exciting to have it cool down some when it's been hot and humid and just disgustingly painful. And then you go to the parts where it's cold, actually gets cold. It's got to be kind of the opposite. Man, I just can't wait for it to warm up some.
Yeah, well, and me personally, I don't function the same when I'm cold. My hands and my feet they'll get cold for no reason, and they'll stay cold, and that's very uncomfortable. I used to have to get out of I never forget. I used to have to go to the bathroom when I worked like in offices. Where it's so fucking cold. You know, they kept the AC on. I would have to get up and go to the bathroom and run my hands under hot water because I just needed to fuck. They were so cold for no
Then
reason.
you get like, then you get those pinpricks as your hands
Yeah.
start to like
Oh, yeah.
get blood flow back again.
Yep. You kind of want to piss yourself. Yeah. I know the whole bit, but that's why I live here now.
Yeah. Hey, we all find our way to where we should naturally be.
I'm
At
cool
some point.
if I'm cool with the Insta sweat if I just never have to deal with another full winter like that.
Yeah, I always tell people, I was like, I don't mind the cold in the sense that I don't mind to visit it. So if I'm going on vacation
Yes.
and it's going to be like a week or maybe two, and I'm just going to visit, and I'm not like I'll go to visit the in-laws in Denver or go to our cabin in Fairplay, and like I don't have to stay though, like I don't
Correct.
have to like stay and deal with driving in these
Yep.
conditions or dealing with the snow and stuff. I'm just there to I can go outside, pack a snowball, throw it at my kids, go inside, warm up, not have to worry about going to work or go grocery shopping.
Bundling up your infant,
That's
and
my
then
kind of cold weather.
unbundling them in
living.
the car, and then bundling them again when you get outside. Unbundling them, just oh god. Me and my wife, we would go on walks with the dogs and the kid when we got here, and I shit you not, for like 2 years we high-fived. We would high-five just on the street in broad daylight. Like we were like, God, it's so fucking. Because when we moved there, it was November, and like Christmas Eve, we were walking the dogs. It was like 75 degrees.
You just
And
look
we were
at
just
each other
like,
and be like, is this really like what it's
Yeah.
just like here, or is this just like a weird time? Like, is this just like a warm year?
We just would leave the house, with whatever you had on. You would just leave the house and start walking down the street, and that's, I think, when it hit us, and we were like, oh yeah, we just left.
We didn't have to plan our day around having like enough layers to survive.
Oh, dude.
The
I wish
layering.
that feeling upon everybody. That like just incredible, like, and that you never going back. I mean, not to live, you know what I mean?
Just
I
go
wish
visit
I
friends and
do
family.
wish that feeling upon people, because it's just it really is. It's like getting a fucking promotion, man. So awesome.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, and I always hesitate to say, hopefully we have a slow year on the hurricane front, and we can all just have a nice, chill, cool
Did
fall
I
and just
Did I see them just upgrade their projections?
really.
I thought that I just heard it. I heard it on the radio where people were like, oh God, National Weather Service, they made a mistake. They believe there's going to be more. And I was just like, what? I never heard anything like that before. But it's just a projection at the end of the day. But I will say last year they were like correct. There was a ton of storms last year.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway.
usually, I mean, that's all long term, tracking of like water temperatures and, big, massive, like kind of like systems that they use to predict it. So I'm not going to like question them. If they tell me it's going to rain tomorrow, I'm going to be like, it's going to rain tomorrow because it
Probably.
always rains around this time of the year. But I don't think I trust you on that. But if you say more storms are coming, I'm going to be like, God damn, they probably
Yeah.
are.
They were right about that shit last year.
Yeah, they're probably right about it this year. I don't want to admit it, but
No, we just don't need any, direct hits. That's
no, just let them do this. They do that little thing where they just kind of swerve out and
all. Yeah.
go fuck off somewhere else.
Speaking of direct hits, Florida State football family took one today, huh?
Yeah,
I mean,
So,
we knew it was coming.
yeah.
But
I mean, he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He announced that in July. I have to assume it had been going on for quite some time before then.
yeah,
He's 91 years old. So, regardless of that diagnosis, it was going to be sooner than later, of course.
Yep.
And once he announced it and they announced it, that's when you know it's going to be sooner than even sooner, based off of age. So yeah, it was a big hit. Both his family, former players, FSU fans, college football, just in general. Just kind of like one of those elder statesmen of college football passing away, whether expected or not. It's always something to be mourned.
Yeah, he. I mean, anytime you get to 90, that's a victory.
Yeah.
But dude, how about having pancreatic cancer and COVID and telling COVID to fuck off at 91, right? Because he had to have had it. He had to have had the cancer.
I mean, he had
right?
to have had the cancer. I mean, it could have gotten diagnosed later, or they could have discovered it, I guess, when they discovered the COVID. But even then, it would have meant he had it at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean...
Hey, my man said enough prayers. They gave him an extra year with the fam.
Yeah, and I'm sure plenty of time to... and I don't know if we discussed it on here. I feel like I've either discussed it with you or TJ, that it was like when the family comes out and the person comes out and says they've got something, that's like the kind of prepare yourself type of thing.
Yeah.
So they got to spend that time with them, and he got to kind of make his rounds to, I'm sure, talk and see people that he cares about before kind of the inevitable were to happen.
Yeah. It's interesting. I said something, we knew it was coming, but he was such an important, arm's length figure in my life that I don't know life any other way. And so even though you're prepared, now that person's gone and you're like, oh, damn. And it still is kind of like a piece of you.
It's still a hit.
Yeah, a piece of you kind of just left too. And you're like, oh, shit. And then you got to start remember, man, I just watched this commercial. I totally forgot about this commercial. He did this Burger King commercial. It is it is so great. And somebody just put it on the timeline. And I just watched it and I was like, God, I forgot about that commercial. And so, it's like all those things. They had this club called Junior Seminole Club. So my first game ever in 1987 when I was like 7 years old. And then the next like 4 or 5 games I went to before we moved back, you get to get a free Happy Meal. If you're a Junior Seminole and you get this hat, I don't know if my dad had to pay or what, but you get to go to McDonald's and get a free Happy Meal on your way to the game. And those are the kinds of things where you just sort of remember, you're like, shit. And he was there then. That was, you know what I mean? Like, that was a long ass time ago.
Well, if you're listening to this and you know who, and you like college football, I guess it's theoretically possible you don't care for college football or sports in general. But Bobby Bowden, like I said, one of the elder statesmen of football, kind of, legends. He's in that pantheon and near the top. Obviously, him having as many wins as he had, he's going to end up near the top of that kind of pantheon. But he started coaching in 1954 as an assistant. 1954.
Was that Samford?
Samford, yeah.
Yep.
And then he, moved to South Georgia State College and then went back to Samford, which became, like they weren't, and then they raised up a level, and there was always all that, rivals saying, well, should it count, should it not, whatever. But they, his wins there counted. But then he came to Florida State, and what I was reading was
he went to West Virginia.
No. I'm saying eventually he came to Florida State.
Yeah.
He went to Samford. He came and coached wide receivers at Florida State, so I wasn't technically wrong. But as far as like head coaching, he was offensive coordinator at West Virginia for a few years, and then coached them for as the head coach for like 5 years, 6 years, and then in 1976 came to Florida State. So kind of like a traditional trajectory even now in college football with like the assistant jobs. But So he came, and what I was reading when I was, there's anytime someone that's a big name or something like that passes away, you get all like the interesting articles from like Sports Illustrated or ESPN or now the Athletic.
random
They'll all
guy.
have
Yeah.
they'll all have this stuff, and one of them said, initially when he first came to Florida State, he planned to just coach for a couple years and then possibly leave and move on to a bigger and better job.
Alabama.
And yeah, and then a couple years turned into what, 35,
yeah.
34 years, something like
Well,
that. Like,
this story is out there, and I'm not sure where, but Alabama approached him, and that was his dream job. And he's from there. He's like, he wanted that job, and they called not to offer him the job, but to offer him an opportunity to interview for the job. Okay. Now, This is like, I think it's like 89-ish, or like right in that time when he had brought Florida State to the
he'd
brink.
already brought them
Okay.
like up to that like level.
Yeah, I can't, the year I can't be quoted on exactly, but he was sort of insulted,
Yeah. I mean, I get
and and I think that he was on the drive or something, and they turned around and went back home. And Ann, like him and Ann, he tells a story in that movie. Oh, that's what it is. That movie they made that they released about him. That it's in there, and I never knew that before seeing that, and I was just like, holy cow! Just like the Ross Perot enters the presidential race, like things that change the
Yeah.
world forever, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
Because
the sports world at least, on that.
and, the ripples of time, think the Florida State program
Butterfly flaps its wings. Well,
would have probably been
picture
fine,
that.
but
I mean, they would have been fine, but would they have been
no, I mean,
like? Would they be that middling program that's like strikes success like once every like 7 years or so and has like a pretty good season of like 10,
Yeah.
11 wins and makes it to like kind of a lower upper or tier bowl game or whatever the case may be, and
fans
like
expect
they would have
lot.
been fine, but they would have been in that kind of weird position of like, well, you're good,
Yep.
but like you're Florida State. You've never won anything. Why do
You're-
you have these expectations of anything
Yep.
else? And going to Alabama, it would have just been more Alabama. Like, fuck.
God, think about how many think about how many titles they'd have right now.
Oh my God, it'd be so. It's like the Yankees with like 27 World Series titles. Like, oh my God, give it a freaking rest already. Let somebody else have something.
Yeah, that's how us Vikings fans feel about the Packers. They've had at this point now like 35 fucking years in a row of Hall of Fame quarterback play, in a row. I'm like, this shit is
At least-
absurd.
I mean,
Absurd.
at least they've considering that run, had very relatively few actual titles to go along with it.
Yeah.
Like they've had more than most teams ever get that aren't
Right.
named the Patriots.
Fucking
but, like-
Minnesota Vikings have literally never been there in my lifetime. And the only times they were there before my lifetime, they lost 4 times. They were favored in 3 of those games.
It's tough. So that's like the kind of thing that you're talking about. Well, if Bowden had just continued to the interview, gotten the job,
Yeah.
like what would Florida State have been? They wouldn't have been what they are and what they became for the next 2
No.
decades. They wouldn't have gone, what was it, 13 years in a row, being
14
ranked
years in a
14
row,
in the
finishing
top
in the top
5.
5.
Like
Yeah. That's
they
really
wouldn't have
hard.
done that. Nobody does that.
No,
I
no.
mean, maybe Alabama's close by this point. Honestly, I have no idea. It seems like they're always in the top 5, but
I don't think they finished in the top 5 the year that in 2013, the year Florida State won it, because they lost to Auburn and then they lost to somebody whooped them in their bowl game.
yeah, that's probably true. But it
was
just seems
Oklahoma or
like
something.
it just seems like the only team that would have the chance to even come close to matching that would have to be like an Alabama.
Yes.
That's just because it's that consistency is hard.
Super hard, and especially
Like
to win it. Obviously getting playoffs is nice for a team like Alabama because they can, they just got too many dudes. But it wasn't, it was BCS up until 2013, right? They had some,
I think what
they
it
had some
started.
title before that.
It pretty much started like 2014, didn't it? Somewhere around there.
It was
14
Florida
or
State.
15.
Florida
Because you
State won the
guys,
last BCS, and then they were in the first playoff.
yeah, and then that's when the Oregon hurling the ball 20 yards backwards thing happened, which still to this day is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in football. But
so crazy, man! It
was pretty wild.
That
but
was that was a hell of a run there for Coach Bowden. I have a couple stories from my times around him. One is actually prior to college. When you grow up a Florida State fan and a football player, like you go to the Bobby Bowden camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the thing that you got to understand is those camps, it was run by Chuck Amato and it was run by the assistant coaches. Mm-hmm. And you don't really see a whole lot of Coach Bowden. He comes and talks to you every once in a while, and then you get that morning of the last day of camp where you get to get your picture taken with him if you want it, those kinds of things. So he wasn't a huge figure in those camps. But my senior year, Coach Jeff Bowden, who was my position coach there, and he had said, you should go to the Bowden Academy. And I said, what's that? He's like, oh, it's another camp we do, but it's just quarterbacks and receivers. And I was like, really? Where is it? He's like, well, it's over at Auburn this year or next year. I can't remember when this conversation was. But I was like, is that right? So we looked up the Bowden Academy, and it was at Auburn University, which at the time Terry was the head coach. Tommy was the receivers coach there. And then obviously Bobby and Jeff were the receivers coach. So we drive to Auburn, Alabama for this camp going into my senior season in high school. And let me tell you, have you been to a game in Auburn?
Not yet.
No. Auburn it's just the most adorable little town. Like, it's like my hometown. It's 35,000 people, and you could look it up. I think it might be a little bigger now, but it's a tiny town. When you consider that every other Saturday in the fall, they've got about 85,000 in a stadium right in the middle of it. And it had there was painting on the windows, on the storefronts, on like the main streets, like Go Tiger. Like it just had this charm to it.
That like small college town kind of like.
It almost was like a high school,
feel.
Like how you get that Varsity Blues feel. It's almost what it was like. But yeah, obviously there's this massive stadium, and so we go there and we have a good 3 days. I ended up winning one of the receiver MVP awards in that camp, and I remember a few things about the camp. They used it as a recruiting tool for sure. Both Auburn and Florida State did.
Of course.
But the one thing that was so cool that I'll never forget is the Bowden clan would hang out in the lounges of the dorms where we were all staying after the last practice. Just like, take your shirt off, put your hand down your pants, and eat some popcorn and shit. Like, it was that in the lounge. Every night they did this, including Coach Bowden. And Coach Bowden coached at the Bowden Academy. And he actually coaches quarterbacks. That's why he coached quarterbacks. And then, so he, at the camp, coaches quarterbacks. And, for somebody that, barely even was at his own camp because of his demanded schedule.
Yeah.
That was so cool. I remember we would tell stories. They would tell stories. And then for me personally, because I had 2 years there in the mid-'80s, I brought up some of my favorite players that I remember. And they would tell some stories about some of the old guys.
The actual.
Yeah. And I remember that. I'll never forget that. I thought that was just, and it, it really showed that as a father, the guys below him weren't falling too far from the tree because they were in the lounge of a non-air conditioned really dorm room in the summertime, just
shooting the breeze.
Yeah. And they didn't have to be. Yeah. And that was awesome. As a player, I was not a special player. I was walk-on guy, and they. But when I needed some help on a couple different things, had a meeting with him, sat in there 10 minutes, asked me about my family. You know what I mean? Like that the guy was, and I wasn't nobody from what did Saban say today? From Adam's cat. And he, but he always gave you the time of day. And I said it on my Facebook post. He made people feel in his presence of value when, he certainly didn't have to do that. I mean,
yeah,
as regularly as he did it, he certainly didn't have to, and he would still be revered today the same. But personally, that for me, I remember that at a time where I was, 20 years old, and I was just chasing a dream, and every other day was a big deal, and so he had the wherewithal on a pretty regular basis just to kind of be a regular person with people, and he wasn't a regular person, obviously, and so I remember that when my mother tutored kids in his office when we were there when we were young. My dad was going to grad school, and I some of those, I have his autograph and a couple other players on a stool from 1993 that my dad got for me when they won the first title, and my wife put it in the closet. It should be in the corner of the room, but whatever. And so I never really got the chance to know him that well, and probably talked to him a total of 10 times, and mostly it wasn't anything serious except for that one conversation, and he made me feel like I was important. And I think that's pretty cool because for as badass a football guy as he was, I think that's the kind of stuff that people will remember way longer.
And it's kind of that way with whatever celebrity you are, whatever kind of realm you float in, whether it's movies, TV, athletes, coaches. Yeah. There's always that kind of like, people will remember like great actors, great coaches, great athletes. But when you personally have interacted with one of them and had a really cool interaction, like you remember them on a different level.
Yeah.
Than just like, oh, I love his movies and that dude seems pretty cool in interviews, or, I like his attitude when he's talking to the press, that kind of thing. It's like, but then when you've actually like talked to some of them, it's pretty differently cool.
I have an awesome dad, and he's my hero. But I can totally understand how so many kids who don't have that have a real deep care for Coach Bowden because of that parental figure that he was in their lives, and he really was like that guy you want your kid to be parented by. So that's where I think it's really different, because some of these guys are entrusted kids, and we see the stories all the time. We know what this meat grinder's like too in real life. Guy's going to leave tomorrow if he gets a better offer, and so what does that really say about how he feels about your kids when he was telling your face, you can count on me for the next 4 years, right?
And then it's gone 2 years later.
And Coach Bowden never lied. You know what I mean? He was one of the few guys that this industry didn't make a liar, and the assistant coaches too. That kind of run for Mickey Andrews is unheard of even in that era. Coaches tended to go on when they were good.
Because assistants, if you're a good assistant, and anyone that has had a successful program knows those assistants are going to get poached, and they're going to move up the ranks. If they're a position coach, they're going to get a coordinator position. Some of them will jump straight up into head coaching at a lower tier, sometimes even very randomly get a lower tier within D1 type of job, but like still like D1 coach to get that opportunity to go from like a position. But that's just the expectation. That's like the progression is you start here like Bowden did, Coach Bowden
Yep.
starting as a wide receiver, and then moving up to an offensive coordinator, and then moving up to a head coach, and then moving from that head coach position into a larger head coach position.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
even if you aren't successful at that larger head coach position, a lot of times you can still move down to like a school that's not as highly thought of where you just got fired from or left from, and still be a head coach. So that's kind of like the trajectory that's expected. And so it's a little bit strange
Yeah.
when that doesn't kind of like when someone doesn't follow that path.
Yeah. Yep. He, the they're obviously very fortunate for it because Mickey Andrews was an incredible man. Same kind of man. This guy would just MF you up and down the field for an hour and a half straight, and he was on the defensive side, so he wasn't my coach, but he was DB coach, so I heard it. Like we would have guys if they get beat deep. Anybody in practice DBs know this? Played for Mickey. If you get beat deep, you're bear crawling back to the line, and and he would just he was just tough, but these guys on defense love that man, and so that within the 24 hours, while he's just all the way in their ass for two, he's got his arms around them for the rest. And I think that finding those kinds of people is just super valuable because especially in that world, think about how many of the kids at that level, Division I football, where the kids come from broken homes at this point in time, that to find the valuable ones that are really going to take care of your kids, I think, I know the parents think about that too. And it's a really big deal. And he was
it's a special thing.
He was there a long time. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was one of the people after watching a few seasons that I went, something, they need to have somebody else be coaching this football team. And, that sort of hurt my feelings but it was pretty clear. I didn't think that Jeff should have been hired as the offensive coordinator after Coach Rick left. That was bad. I understand why it happened because the man's a family man. But that was rough because Jeff is an excellent wide receivers coach. He really was, and he played the position he knew, but he wasn't ready to be an offensive coordinator.
Just a little bit out of his depth.
Yep, and that ended up costing Coach Bowden, some of those years down the road because they were still good for those first years. Like when Chris Ricks was the quarterback, like they were like 8-4, 9-3, and whatever.
It's kind of like that, like victim of your own success type of thing.
Yep.
You've been so great for so long, for so many years, that when you fall, not even very far, but you just go from like this like extremely high level and just take like that one step or two steps down, where 90% of programs are just killed to be stay in that range for that time frame. But depending on where you're at, like if Alabama, like even under Saban, took that step down 2 steps for like 5 years.
Oh, he'd be gone way before 5 years.
He'd probably he'd retire himself. I think he would just say, "I'm just out of here. Look, okay, good luck," type of thing. But like, and Spurrier mentioned that when he left and he went, he wanted the extra challenge of going to the NFL. And a lot of coaches want to go NFL, and some are just fine, just staying in the college ranks. It's just who they are, and they, they're making enough money that they don't feel like the money is the main driving force there, where they just don't feel like, they enjoy the challenges of, recruiting and all that. But even Spurrier said it got to the point where, 10 wins wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It's like, what, you're not winning 11?
Right.
You're not 11-1, or, what are you doing? And so 10 wins became where it wasn't even good enough. And then you get into with the Foley wanting him to interview to come back and him saying, fuck off, I'm going to go to South Carolina. I mean,
right.
I get it.
No, it's you set a standard. I mean, but this is why I think this is why Bill Belichick's of the world, Tom Brady's and Saban's, I think this is really why those people should be remembered and praised, is because it's really, really hard when you know that, especially in college football, like one loss means so much.
Yeah.
That if Alabama lost every single year 2 times, it would be a problem right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And so 2 times, that's twice, and so that is and for those, and it doesn't matter because Saban, and he still wins. And like you, it just becomes an expectation. And after '93, when Florida State won their first one, and Bowden, he was after that for years. It took him a long time, and then he could have, could have threw the towel in then, but to be able to then keep it, and honestly, if you look at 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, they were either in the title game, should have been in the title game,
or right there.
Yeah, so it was like, and those are, 93 to 99. Those are 2 full classes of recruits, right? So that level of just keep it there before it falls apart, it's just really, really hard to find. I don't know. Is there another? I mean, Chris Peterson at Boise, I think, should get more credit, but he's gone from Boise. So Saban's still at Alabama. That level of success is crazy.
And honestly, I'm not going to say we're getting past that era of where coaches will stay for. It was always very rare to have a coach that would stay at the same school, because at a certain point, it's like what you're now going against isn't the other teams. It's about you're almost competing against yourself.
Yeah.
Can I keep up this level? And most of the guys are like, well, it's time to go find a different challenge, or it's time to, retire, spend some time with family, whatever the case may be. So in my opinion, when you reach like a certain level, the challenge is not necessarily winning games obviously is always the important thing that you always have to do. But at a certain level, you will continue to win games, because you just become like a snowball rolling downhill. And for some programs, it's just like, but where do I go from here? Like, as a coach, I've done all of this. How do maintaining that motivation?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, Bowden, he never, he climbed a mountain, but it took so long because there were so many hurdles to climb on the way. But 4 years before Bobby Bowden, Florida State was like 4-40 or something.
I think I saw that in the 3 years before they were 3-29 or something. So add another win and another 9 losses or whatever to that, and you'll be right at where they were at before. They were on death's door as a program, and so that. The ability to then he was like 44-10 in his first 5 years there, or something crazy. The only losing season he had at Florida State was the first
76.
one.
Yeah. And so he built that thing, but built it to what, right? I mean, he built it out of the ground of nothing to at least something. But that something is still a far cry from Michigan, Ohio State, and whoever else at that point, right? Because those were powers. And so he went and played
Blue
them.
Bloods.
He went and played all those teams. He was like, fuck it, I'll go to Nebraska. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Dude,
he had the mindset of play anywhere, anytime, any place.
And so he had to get the notoriety.
And that's why, and I'm not trying to make this a big deal. Like, you see like programs like UCF, and they're like, well, we want a home and home, and schools are like, no. And I'm like, what you should do is accept the lopsided thing and go beat them. Beat them in their house. Force respect out of people that don't have any reason to respect you, and just beat them. Forget about fairness. Forget about anything else, because none of that matters, because all of these big programs can find other people to play. They don't have to play you. They have no reason to play you. So accept the lopsided thing. Be like, well, we shouldn't have to. No, you shouldn't.
But you're gonna get
But
paid.
but
too.
if you're trying to get the respect, you're going to get the respect not by playing people in your house. You're going to get the respect by playing people in their house and then beating them in their house. Like,
That's
and
right.
sometimes that's what you have to do. You're like,
Yeah.
life's not always on your side. Sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone and just prove something. And that's what, like, some of these programs should have taken this lesson from Bowden in those early years, especially when y'all were independent until what, 90, 89, 90? When did
that?
y'all
Join the ACC? Well, in football at least.
in football?
Basketball is a little different,
In-
but
yeah, just in football, it was.
yeah, I don't think it was after '89.
90. It was 90.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
so some of the when you look at some of those old schedules, when you look back on that, you're like, oh my god,
Why?
these guys
Why?
are maniacs. Because they were like at LSU, at Nebraska, at Pitt. That was, by the way, when Pitt had Dan Marino, shit like
Yeah.
that. Like they were really road warriors. You know what, UCF, if they did something like that too, and got like their fans to travel a little bit, that shit would become a thing. Like for a program like that.
They're too centrally located in a high school powerhouse state with high school talent surrounding them because it's Orlando.
Yeah, in every direction.
Just play some, like, to take the lopsided thing, try to beat them, and then you're going to get the respect at some point that teams are going to look bad if they say, no, we're not going to take this. We're going to.
So why-
you have to come here?
Do you think that? This is two questions. Why is Florida playing at USF this year?
But I think we signed a home neutral, or a home, 2 at our place and 1 at theirs, or something like that. Like,
Got it.
we gave
Okay.
them a lopsided deal, and we're
And they
playing
took
in
it.
Raymond James Stadium.
Right now, their stadium. Yeah.
But like UCF, I get you want to play there, but it's a small stadium. It's like
Yeah,
50,000. It's big for like the level of their program, but I think Florida would just want to get
A home
the
game. Do you think
opportunity
Florida
basically for more of the Florida fans to be there.
Do you think Florida would play them just at Florida? Like, because there's I know FSU played USF back when USF was good, but some of those schedules are made like a decade in advance, so
Yeah.
like you don't know.
I think right a little bit
I don't know.
after
Now with the playoff and
the
shit, I guess I
season
don't
that
know.
like a year or two after that year that USF was like number 3 in the country.
Yeah.
We played them in Gainesville. I don't know, like these schedules they get made so far out, and I wish that like something could change about that because it was like, hey, yay, we're playing at Texas in 2035. That's going to be super fun. I hope I'm
Yeah.
alive. Like
Or like maybe Texas,
that's only 14 years from now. I'll be 53. That'll be fun.
or like maybe it was 3 years ago, and Texas is 4-8.
I wonder, like, so when Texas joins, like, I guess we just cancel out those games, and find somebody else to play in 2035.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think that
Scheduling is a whole nother ball game now, and I feel like back then when FSU and Bowden were doing it, like I don't feel like they were pushed out as far as they are, and so
no,
not that far. A few
you're right.
a few years maybe, but not like 15 years, 10 years. I mean, like at some point we're going to reach a point where we're scheduling games 29 years from now in the year 2050, and someone's going to have to be like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Why are we doing this? We're tying ourselves into contracts 30 years from now.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah, it really is a weird one. Dude. Yeah, let me read you. I just pulled up the 1981 Florida State schedule because I just sort of remember that one being one of those years. They opened up with Louisville and Memphis State at home. And then, listen to this shit, all in a row. At Nebraska, at Ohio State, at Notre Dame, at Pitt, number 3 Pitt, at LSU. That's their schedule from September 19th to October 24th. And then they come home for Western Carolina for a break, and then they get Miami, who is in the top 15, and Southern Miss, who is in the top 15, and then at Florida. and here's how, like, this is how you know you're going to build program. They lost at Nebraska that year by 20 points, and then beat number 7 Ohio State at Ohio State, beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, lost badly to Pitt at Pitt, beat LSU at LSU. But trust me, those guys were tired after that because they went LLL in the final 3. And Florida was 35-3.
And you have to look at, like, some of that, like, it's not just being tired. It's like the mental exhaustion of being on the road that many times in a row.
Dude,
like coming back and playing, like, that's a true homecoming. You're like, we've been playing like at all of these for the last 5 weeks or 5 games, and finally we get to play in front of the home crowd.
And they go 3-2 on that road stretch, you know, which is unbelievable. God, I totally forgot about the Ohio State. I don't remember that. I mean, I obviously don't remember anything. I was 2, but I didn't remember that they played Ohio State that year too. But yeah, that's the way to do it if you're a team right now.
Just line up who you can, play who you can. You're gonna have to take some lopsided.
You got to be good enough.
Scheduling.
Yeah, it's not like, don't be East Tennessee State and do that, because obviously you're never going to be anything. But
No,
UCF is a good example.
If you're not that paid game team that all you're doing is going to accept $750,000 to just go get beat, but you have confidence and you're a big school. I mean, they got like 70,000 students there or some crazy.
Yeah.
And good location, you know.
And then this tells you what they did the following year. They had a better year, but they went to Ohio State again the next year and beat them again. Okay, so that's exactly what you're talking about. They played Ohio State 2 years in a row at Ohio State and beat them both times. And that was a year they still lost to Pitt that year, who was number 2 in the nation. They lost at LSU, and then they lost at home to Florida. Like, that's what unfortunately did it for them in that rivalry. They play the schedule, and then they got to end with a really good team in Florida every year.
It's like, damn, right up the road too.
Like,
but you know, that's it's just, and most people want to be given things. People don't want to have to put that level in. Bowden forced people to give that respect, and I mean, as an independent up until 90, obviously you had a little bit of flexibility in who you played. You had a lot more flexibility in who you played, but they could have easily chosen play 1 or 2 hard ones and like kind of skimp elsewhere. But they really made the schedule stacked, and you know that teaches your coaches a lot. You know, your assistants teaches you a lot as a coach. It teaches any of those players that are coming up through those times that then is around for later years. It teaches them a lot, you know, like.
Yeah. Oh, they were at. Then they went. Yeah, dude. Yeah. See,
you learn a lot. You learn a lot from, you know, challenges. Challenge yourself. You're going to learn a lot from it, whether you win or lose or struggle or greatly succeed. You're going to learn a lot from those challenges.
I listened to the halftime at Nebraska earlier today. There's nothing, you know, technical or anything about it, but it just makes you feel like we're gonna win. He's like, running backs can't have you fumbling, no fumbling. Okay, like I was listening to it. I'm like, oh yeah, no shit. And but then, you know, but he was just so direct and matter of fact about, you know, that they were going to win that game, and that, you know, that kind of confidence. It would be really neat to go on the road with those guys and just try to build something. Like, fuck everybody. We're on a fucking Greyhound bus out here in Lincoln, Nebraska, because these fucking guys won't come play us. Okay, and like build something like that. I think that
Yeah.
those guys were absolute animals that were on those early '80s teams because they lost. I mean, they lost a lot. I mean, they were just absolute warriors.
Yeah, it takes a lot to lose and then come back, and then lose and then come back and then win.
Yeah,
like you go lose, and then you beat Ohio State, and then you lose, and then you have to come back out again, and you're playing like Notre Dame, and then you win.
yeah.
Like it takes a lot of
You're really
but-
it's a boxing match, right? You're just you're going to get punched, and you just got to punch too.
yeah,
None of us like that. We want our team to win all the games.
Yeah.
Like so it would be really hard to watch like Mississippi State go 6-5 as a Mississippi State fan, but they're in some absolute battles
yeah,
with monsters, and it should. I hope and it seems that pageantry in college football is just so crazy. People do still love on those teams all the same.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I can't. It's just got to be really, really tough because that's not the norm anymore.
yeah,
For us, like if your team loses 4 games, you're just kind of like, yeah, shoot, fuck, 8 or 9-4 is still like a good ball club
yeah.
in a year, and we don't view it that way anymore. We might
Yeah.
start to view it a little bit differently if 12 teams get into the playoff. Because
Yeah, because you might have a chance to still make it in with 3 losses. You could be
Yeah.
9-3 and still make it in.
exactly, some of those
There's
Florida
gonna
State teams would have been
there's gonna
hit.
be there's gonna be one of those points where the team that came in second in like a division of a conference is gonna be like, well, I'm glad we don't have to play in the conference game because we'll still make the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Like it's gonna be like Florida finishing second with 2 losses and Georgia making it in and being like, well, we should still probably make the playoffs. That kind of thing.
Yep.
Which is a little bit weak, but it's also kind of like, well, at least you make the playoffs.
Imagine trying to deal with this early '80s Florida State team in your playoff thing, bracket. You know what I mean? Because you're like, well, they're 8-4, but holy shit, look at look at all their losses. Like, you know what I mean? They would get, because strength of schedule matters a lot now, and I don't know that anyone cared back then because they just picked a winner at the end of the year.
Well,
So
there's like nobody knew. Like there wasn't any way to really objectively judge any of this because there was like nothing. It was all regional, so like
Yeah.
you didn't necessarily get to see. You would just have to read what happened, read the box score, read the report from the writer that happened to be there.
Yep.
And kind of just judge. Like, so there was no real, like, you couldn't just watch. Like, yeah, like you could, like, if you're a bigger like program or a bigger area, you could track down the highlight. You would get the highlights and stuff for like the local news and stuff. But it wasn't like it was nothing like it is now. There was none of this like level of coverage, and like I can go onto any number of sites and look up any game that's happened that day. Like it doesn't matter how big the school is. Like I can see, and so it's just a whole different ball game. It's a lot of it's changed.
Yeah, I really think that helped them, become the program they were too, because
They almost
now
had
people in Nebraska and in Michigan and in Indiana and all these places are watching Florida State because, by God, these fucking guys, they're going everywhere to play. And so they're going to get put on the TV, at least a local TV, for those fans, and build a national brand enough. Think about that. 1981, Florida State's 5 years removed from almost losing a football program, but those people in Nebraska didn't know that. They're like,
They
who the
didn't
fuck
know
are these guys?
They didn't know anything other than Florida is indeed a state.
Yeah, right.
And some of them probably didn't even know that, honestly.
And UF, for example, they didn't need to do that to have and build the program that they needed to build. Florida State, had to do that. They had to do something when you look back, and that probably did, help. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I think you just. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I muted it for a second.
It probably did help, for them, from their standpoint, to get their program where they needed it to be.
Yeah,
And Bobby refused the SEC, and we all look back now, and I looked back about 10 years ago and thought that was silly.
But
But at the time, you
it's
understood
about-
what he was doing.
It's about making the best opportunity for your program.
I don't think they understood the dollars that were involved or going to be involved.
But nobody, I mean, even the SEC in Florida didn't understand TV dollars like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right. Nobody did. Yeah.
The SEC was founded in, 1930 something, 32, 33. Like there was no TV money involved. And even later on, like when Florida finally, or the SEC finally got the like CBS like National Game of the Week stuff, like even then, like the TV money just wasn't something that was like really thought about because it was still such a heavily regional sport.
Yeah.
So if Florida State had joined the SEC, I don't know where they'd be now. They'd have more money, but would they have the name recognition from?
Well, they probably
from
would
the path. I don't know. Like they probably
remember,
would, but it's hard.
SEC,
like when you join the SEC or you're in the SEC, you're basically it's like Alabama. Florida's up there sometimes, but like Alabama's like this like kind of overbearing like shadow over every program. You need to like reach this mythical level of trying to be like Alabama as far as like championships and stuff, and it's hard to like be overshadowed like that. At least when Florida State was in the ACC, they got prominent display weekly and kind of got to be that shadow.
Well, ultimately, I think that they should have picked the SEC, and I've always thought that because of the regional rivalries and its importance. And they basically played the SEC.
Can you imagine
they played LSU in Florida like every other year.
Man,
so
it would be fun to see some of those games still going on like now and through like the 90s through now. It would have been fun to see some of those matchups against some of those the Florida ones were always happening, but like to see Florida State play Georgia every year would have been pretty cool.
Hell yeah. And I think that the fans, I think that being in those games where you can create these huge rivalry environments with almost every game, because Florida State would have had Florida, Miami, Georgia. I mean, they would have had all these that would be considered real rivalry games, and that would have only helped them. In the beginning, SEC wasn't great either. They had in the 80s and shit, early 80s, I mean, they were like, all of a sudden Bo Jackson was there, but they were real good, and Auburn and Alabama was real good. But Alabama had some real long down years too. After Stallings, right? Things were weird for them.
Yeah.
They won the one title at the end there. What was that? 89 or can't remember when. But then
I forget the exact date.
Their 90s were struggle because Florida State beat Alabama in Saban's first year there in Jacksonville, and I don't even remember what year that was, but like that was his first year, and that was basically the only year that Alabama wasn't really, really good since. But it was a long run there for a while for them.
Yeah,
I think that was even like 05 or 06. I mean, they struggled for a while.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately, FSU has more losses, but I don't know that those losses hurt because taking your fan base on the road to Athens or Death Valley, true. You know what I mean? That's awesome, dude. I think that would have helped build selfishly, who doesn't want to watch better games more often?
Yeah. I mean, the fans always want better games, and the coaches and administrators are like, we want a balance of taking care of the fans, but also we want to win enough games that our fans don't leave us.
Florida State, Tennessee every year with Peyton Manning. Oh my God, dude, that would have been.
We'd have to see if Florida State could have beaten them 4 years in a row, like
Florida did. I know, it's incredible. Imagine that. I mean, those were good Tennessee teams, and obviously Peyton was fantastic.
And then the year after Peyton left, and they won the championship.
They won it.
And one of the most boring games in a national championship I ever watched, y'all versus them. I was like watching that. I was like, oh my God,
dude!
Can somebody score?
Florida State still almost won that game, and they didn't have literally the Heisman Trophy winner from the next year who couldn't play in the game. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's the
There's-
worst luck. That should have been Florida State national title. Should have been back-to-back, 98, 99. This isn't even including the fact that Randy Moss should have been that team, which I don't want to fucking talk about. But they would have won probably 4 in a row or 3, however long he stayed.
As a Florida fan, let me just say, I'm glad that never happened. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't want Tennessee to win either, but it's
Yeah,
like
right.
a rock and a hard place type of thing. We have to recruit against both of them, but it would have been infinitely worse if y'all won 3 in a row. So I'm
Dude,
glad that didn't happen.
they had Peter Warwick and Randy Moss on the same team. Could you have freaking imagine? Randy Moss would did things at Marshall that people still have nightmares about, and they don't even have a rival.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace to a real one, and Bobby Bowden. The nice thing about being a legend is you're forever remembered. It's kind of like I'm going to be, 20 years from now, I could be sitting at a bar talking about college football, and Bobby Bowden's going to come up at some point, especially if I'm talking to a Seminole fan.
Yeah.
Especially a young one. I would be like, remember, you don't know this, but back in, the 90s.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was really neat today just to see, Miami.
There's a lot of cool stories
Miami
that people
Twitter
are telling
and
on the timeline.
Florida Twitter, Spurrier, Urban Meyer, Manny Diaz. Like, these people are obviously everybody's rivalry in the state, all 3 of us, but there's just a tremendous, and Saban's was incredible. If you haven't read Saban's story,
Yeah.
Just that kind of outpouring about just what a guy this coach was outside of football. I think that I think that says a lot, because those rivalries can get pretty heated, and with the fans too, and sometimes even ugly online. But I thought that was pretty classy to see those guys.
But ultimately, in the end, competitors respect competitors.
Yeah.
So clearly,
Yeah.
Spurrier, I'm sure, wishes he won more games against him. I'm sure, but iron sharpens iron, so you can't,
Yeah, those were
that made
those were great.
that prepared his teams for other times when they, so.
Yeah, it was
He's a real one.
a hell of a run for the man, and best to his family, and it was good to reminisce. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we'll cut it off here, and we'll come back in a few days and record again, and I'm sure we'll have some other stuff to talk about. We'll always come up with something to talk about.
Yeah.